when it comes to my personal expectations, what I wanted out of this game was narrative, storytelling, character building, and what they have done with that so far is multiplied. Like, you take what happened, Mass Effect 1, 2, 3, it's just been multiplied. Like, it's so much better. Instead of crews being in static position around the ship, they move around now. They interact with each other outside of you. What I noticed just the other day driving around on a planet, because they'll talk to each other when you're in the Nomad, your vehicle, right? And at first when I was playing, it's all right, random shit that they say to each other. It wasn't just till the other day I realized that if you're on the planet for like an extended amount of time, it's actually a conversation that they're carrying on over the course of like an hour. With arguments, resolutions, actual character building between them outside of your main character. And that's something that the other games never really touched on. So it does build and it does stuff better than the other games did. But again, because of the animations or the glitches, there are so many people out there that are just completely writing it off.
Yeah. And it comes back to, like you say, what is your expectation of a company? When I buy a game from Bethesda, I know what I'm getting. I'm getting a game that is probably glitchy, is probably going to break a couple times, but at the end of the day will be fun enough and have a good enough story behind it that I won't care about those things. So the question is, what is your expectation when you buy a game from BioWare? And having played Dragon Age, I didn't play Mass Effect, but I did play through Dragon Age. For me, it's kind of the same. I expect there to be some bugs. I played through KOTOR. There were bugs. There were all kinds of problems in that game. So I don't know why I would expect anything different from Mass Effect Andromeda. But that said, maybe playing Mass Effect 1, 2, and 3 would have changed that about me. I don't know. Well,
I'm actually really disappointed that Nika isn't here, because one of the things that I wanted to bring up, since we're talking about expectations, when Breath of the Wild first came out, mad reviews everywhere. 10 out of 10 everywhere, right? Perfect game. Nika was pretty upset with when she beat it. There wasn't much of a story to it.
Well, but that's the thing, is that so with more games moving to this open world structure, and again, a narrative being very difficult to deliver inside of this open world structure without feeling like you're directing the player very specific places. And at that point, that makes me go, okay, fine, just design really interesting hallways then. You know what I mean? Like, if you're gonna make this gigantic map and I'm only gonna see a small section of it, why design the whole fucking map?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, make it interesting.
Exactly. And so, I think that it's really interesting, because a game like Dark Souls, in a narrative fashion, I think actually does deliver a narrative that is way more satisfying if it were put into an open world scenario where you're pulling out context clues and characters aren't giving you a straight read of all of the information, and you're not overwhelmed with data all the time, right? And it's hilarious, because Dark Souls is not anywhere near an open world game. It's non-linear. It's definitely non-linear, but it's not necessarily an open world game. It's a hub and spoke game.
And one of the things too that people were trying to because when Nika was talking about this, she had a bunch of people come into defense of Zelda, and probably the thing that I read that just frustrated me the most was people were like, well, it doesn't need a story, it's open world. Open world doesn't lend itself to having narrative. What? And what you just said about Dark Souls, I think, is the perfect way to do open world narrative, is putting these context clues all over the place. Horizon had a great narrative overall, but then there was also this other narrative going on outside of the story that existed, just within the past of the world, that you could find by going around and finding all these different context clues, all these different recordings and like hollow images and stuff.
And way too often, the player is sort of bombarded with so much lore that they're trying to expose through the main part of the story, and not relegating enough to these, kind of like Easter egg or collectible sorts of things.
Well, that's the thing, is too often people are trying to put this like storybook narrative into an open world game, where it's like, literally, here's a book that you could read from start to finish. And if you're going to have an open world game, you can't do your narrative that way, or you shouldn't do your narrative that way. What Dark Souls does get right is that you could play the entire game and miss 95% of the narrative.
Right.
Well, like I did on my first playthrough. My first playthrough of Dark Souls
And
1,
Dark Souls says that that's okay. Like, they're like, yeah, that's fine.
That's fine. Yeah, I got to the end of the game.
There's no problem with that.
I got to the end of the game, and the extent of my knowledge was I'm an undead person. I need to ring these bells, and then I need to defeat 3 guys and go fight the final boss. That was the extent of my knowledge of the game, and I got the final choice at the end as to whether to reignite the flame or let the Age of Darkness happen.
Right.
And I had no idea what the context of either of those things were. So
light the flame.
Yeah, you say it out loud, but I mean, it's not totally clear what the fuck that decision even means.
Right.
It's not like the Legacy of Kain.
Right.
You know, it's not like Blood Omen where it's like, do I destroy the world and become the vampire king, or do I sacrifice myself and everyone lives?
And even
he becomes the vampire king.
He becomes the vampire king. Yeah, that is the canon decision.
Yeah, and even to be fair, even once you do know the context behind those choices, really neither of them are particularly satisfying.
Yeah,
the story is kind of about pointlessness.
And the thing is that like Dark Souls, like I had a message underneath its narrative.
Yeah,
and I think that there's something that's brave about a game designer saying, okay, here's this big idea that I've sketched out, and it's okay if you miss 95% of it. It's fine.
Well, and you know what? I think that obviously Dark Souls, Horizon Zero Dawn, and Mass Effect also do with this auxiliary media that or lore that's spread out through the game that you could potentially, miss. I think they do a good job of putting it in front of you. Whether you read it or not is up to you.
Right.
But the reason I think that works is, we're in the age, especially with MMOs, of the cutscene skippers, right? Like, people just want to play the game. There's some people that don't necessarily care about, like, the narrative.
They don't want to read the item flavor text.
And that's fine.
Yeah.
Putting it to where they don't necessarily have to skip it, but they're just walking past it, I think that's cool for them. But for other people, like, I think obviously all of us,
the people who are paying very close attention,
Chris.
Yeah, I would just walk past that.
Yeah, it adds so much.
You're right.
Horizon, again, was really, really good. There was a bunch of different types of open world collectibles, they called them, and some of them were basically these books that you could find, and oh my god, they had paragraphs in them, but they did so much, like, to help you connect to not just the lore of, like, the world overall, but, like, to the lore of, like, the different factions and, like, the histories of them. Like, this is a game that in one shot, right, like, this is the beginning of a franchise, but it is such a strong beginning. Like, there is so much in this game.
But the other thing, and again, I'm kind of bummed out that Nika's not here, is, like, what was her expectation from Zelda? If it was like this, love story that they seem to have shoehorned into the last bunch of Zelda games, then I'm going to tell you right there, I didn't want to see that at all. And the lack of it, I thought, was a little bit refreshing, because what it felt like was it felt very much like putting in the original NES Zelda cart for the first time, hitting power and just moving screens. You know what I mean? Like that. The first Zelda had that same kind of feel where you could skip all the bullshit and go straight to the final dungeon if you wanted to. You'd get wrecked, but that was a possibility.
Yeah. Her bottom line seemed to be that as far as the narrative went, because obviously as you're going around talking to people, there's like story going on in this world, right? But that the crux of like the narrative happened before the game even started. Like, there's all this stuff that you learn happened beforehand, and she's like, why wasn't that the game?
Right. You're not involved in much of the narrative.
Yeah, basically you wake up and you can just go and fight Ganon right away, and that kind of disappoints me a little bit, because I was looking forward to playing it too. And what I think drew me the most into this game, or that I was most excited about, is that Zelda doesn't just look like the princess. They gave her this whole new redesign and stuff like that. And I thought it was going to be a whole new take on her, but if she's not even involved that much in the story that you play, it just seemed, I don't know. I was disappointed by the whole fact. I mean, I'm still going to play it, but the reason that this kind of polarized me when it comes to Mass Effect is everyone's like, it looks so shitty, not gonna play it, but they have no idea what's, involved narratively in it. How good is the story compared to the first one? The characters, that's what's most beloved about the original Mass Effects, is the characters. And then you look at Breath of the Wild, which is an absolutely beautiful, stunning game, right? I know that Chris hates the art style, all right, but it looks great. But then, according to Nick anyway, doesn't have much story to it. So it's like, which would you prefer?
Chris is a dumb shit, because I'm going to guess that he probably liked the art style of Wind Waker.
Chris?
I wouldn't say I like the style of Wind Waker, but I think if Breath of the Wild did have the Wind Waker style, it'd be a better game for it.
I think you're retarded.
I hate it.
I think you're stupid. I think it looks fine. It's fine.
I can't stand Breath of the Wild. It just looks so awful.
But what
It's
about your
fine.
Bokobo sticks?
What about it visually is unappealing? Because I mean, I haven't had a problem with it.
It just looks really bad. Like the art style would have been fine, but like everything just looks so jagged. And I'm not usually one for calling shit out for being jagged and stuff, but like everywhere I look, it just
He
looks
was complaining
really,
about
really...
the blades of grass when I was watching him play.
Oh my God! You're playing it on the Wii U. Shut the fuck up.
There's no difference.
Shut the fuck up.
You shut the fuck up. You don't even know. It's the same on the Switch,
God.
you piece of shit.
Oh my
Fuck
God!
off.
What an invalid argument. The resolution is shitty as he sits there and plays it on his fucking Wii U. Get out of here, you fucking piece of garbage.
It's the same on the Switch,
Oh
you
my!
moron.
No,
You
it
idiot.
is not.
It
Don't
totally
even.
is.
Now, to
Don't
be fair,
says a guy
the
who's never
FPS
even
is different.
says a guy who's never even touched a Switch. Go fuck yourself.
my
God,
gosh.
he says
his
shit.
defense-
He says shit all the time without having any context for it. But this is the worst of it.
Okay,
because this
I'm
just
sorry.
throws out all of his gaming ignorance right in front of everyone.
I'm sorry,
This is
I was
why-
playing
no,
Zelda
no, no,
on
no,
my
no, no.
72-inch
Shut up.
TV.
This is why we don't have you on checkpoint, because your opinions about gaming even stink. Holy shit!
Okay, graphics aside, can we at least ask him about gameplay? Like what
Fuck
he liked
no!
and
I
didn't
don't want to
like?
hear any. Dude, do you really want to hear
I do.
anything he has to say about
I
video
do.
games anymore after hearing that?
I do.
I don't. Fuck you, dude. Fuck you. Oh my God! Ugh, the resolution's so bad on my Wii U. My Wii U. Ugh.
Can you guys fucking get this over with already?
What is this?
Fuck's sake. Ugh.
Okay, what's your...
You are the worst. You're the worst excuse for a fucking gaming talk show host.
What's your experience with Breath
You don't. Does I've at least played it on a Switch? Have you?
You played it?
I have.
Yeah, his weed dealer let him play it.
That's right.
Great, so you played it on a
I played it on the Switch. So that
on the Switch screen,
yeah.
not on a big screen.
Does it matter?
Yeah, it matters when you're playing on a fucking 72-inch TV.
I wouldn't play it on a 72-inch TV, you dumb fuck. That's your problem. Why would you play it? Why would you play it on a big screen TV when you've got that nice hardware in front of you? Just play it as a handheld. It's a handheld. No one. The only people who are trying to sell this system as anything but a handheld is Nintendo. No one else is buying it at all. At all. Don't put it on the TV. That's like plugging your fucking PSP in to the component out and complaining, oh, this resolution is terrible. Yeah, you're plugging in a handheld to a television. My God. You, like, the credibility that this show just lost because of your dumb ass.
Hey, now to be fair, I don't think they put much credibility in him to begin with, so I think we're okay.
Yeah, that's fair.
I think we're okay.
That's fair.
Yeah.
You want to keep complaining about your blades of grass?
Looks like garbage.
I think what he would rather complain about
Quit playing it on a Wii U.
is the weapon durability
Quit playing
system.
your video game console on a TV. What are you doing? This is the age of handhelds.
Well, dude, it's like plugging in your 3DS to a TV and going, why does Pokemon look like shit? Because you're playing it on a handheld device, dummy.
Why does my Pokemon get 14 frames a second?
Because you're playing it on a handheld device,
Well,
dummy.
To be fair, it gets 14 frames per second in some instances of the game anyway.
When you're not exporting it to a television. Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Even when you transport to television.
No,
Well, geez, where were we after that?
No, but I mean, like, I when you have a game that is open world, I think that Nintendo acknowledging and not trying to put a narrative on top of Zelda is going like, okay, well, open worlds don't really lend themselves well to very cohesive narratives in the first place. Let's just skip it.
That's arguable, though.
Let's just skip it. No, I don't think it is arguable, because the amount of games that have done it and failed, to me, says that it's not.
So you think that it was that like, you know, at a board meeting somewhere, and they're like, all right, let's not have an actual story in this one. It's all about exploring. You think that was like a decided?
No, I think as soon as they made the decision to take it open world, the story guys looked at him and went, okay, how do you want us to write a modular story that is able to fit into your game design? And they went, oh, we don't really know. And the conversation was like, oh, well, open world games kind of, all of their narratives suck. Like, that's the thing about open world games that I think most people have been really struggling with, is that outside of Grand Theft Auto and the, Fallout series, anything basically touched by Bethesda, that open world games or games that or titles that are shifting to an open world, format aren't really benefiting in any way, shape, or form from that format. Can you really say that Final Fantasy 15?
Oh God, no! But that
benefited from the open world.
That had so many things wrong with it. Though.
All right.
I definitely understand that the open world is a big pitfall that a lot of people are falling into.
And I think, like, if you just look at Ubisoft and how often their open world games end up falling flat, I think that you can see all of the pitfalls of an open world narrative that just doesn't lend itself well to an open world.
I don't know if that's open world's fault or if that's Ubisoft's fault.
I will guarantee, I will back you up on that, because I think that the list of people who can pull it off is far smaller than the list of people who are trying. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of people who are trying. Almost every, what game have you heard coming out in the last 5 years that isn't boasting an open world on it? Like
Resident Evil 7.
Most games, okay, fair, but most games are, they're like, hey, this big immersive open world. Like, that's all you've
Growing
been
up,
hearing.
it was the RPG thing, and now they're like, oh, let's put them all into open worlds now.
Exactly. And not all of them are working very well.
Well, so much of that, too, I think, is on us, the player base, when we start assigning, like, these buzzword terms to games that immediately invalidate the game. Like, you remember FF13 and the phrase hallway simulator?
Yes.
And we started applying that to any game that used that linear progression.
Okay,
No.
But
We did.
FF13 was so notorious.
I get that, but that's not the point. The point is that after that game, we started applying that to any game that went linear, and people started getting afraid of that. And so as soon as you hear, oh, it's a hallway simulator, I don't want to play it anymore.
I think, Callie, you bring up a good point, that there was sort of this, like, overreaction to that criticism, much like there was an overreaction to this idea that, turn-based combat is passé.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, there was a big industry overreaction in terms of the development of the games that came out for the next 5 to 10 years, and we're still going through that. Like, we're still seeing a lot of these games that were, advertised as open worlds that now have got to subsequently pull it off. Yeah. And structuring your narrative inside of that is very difficult.
And it's like you said earlier, there's nothing wrong with a game being a hallway simulator if the hallway looks interesting. FF13 was boring all the way through, and it felt like a linear set of hallways.
If you don't realize you're in a hallway simulator, because like I said, with Mass Effect 2 and 3, like when you went on a mission, it was linear. It wasn't like you came to a pass where it's like, oh, do I go this way or this way? You fought along what was ostensibly a hallway, but you still felt like you were in a world. You were on a mission. You had a point that you were going to. In FF13, you land in this lake that's now been frozen, and if you look at your mini-map, there's just one fucking way to go.
Right.
Okay? It was so terrible with how much of a hallway it was.
The mini-map in that game really did it a disservice because it made you, like, you could have... Without the minimap, you would have gone through FF13, and it would have just been, one linear path, but it wouldn't have felt like it so much.
I think it probably still would have.
Maybe.
But what I'm interested to see now, right? Because, obviously, I think that Final Fantasy 15 probably sold enough games to be profitable, okay? But based on how it was received, what I'm excited for with the inevitable Final Fantasy 16 is what way Square Enix goes, because I definitely feel like what they did with 15, since it was in development more or less at the same time that 13 was, because it's supposed to be like a component to 13.
Right. Yeah, it was part of Fabula Nova Crystallis at some point.
So I think that because of the negative, sentiment around hallway simulators with 13. I think that played a big role in how they decided to develop FF15 into open world. And now, based on the reactions to how they did that, they're going to have to find what, like a sweet spot in between for 16. Like what's their next play? Because I think you're right, Nate and Callie, that because of the negative sentiments around FF13, that a lot of people wanted to step away from that idea. Like, we need to go open world now. And it's industry leaders like Square Enix that I think a lot of people take cues from.
No, you're right.
And if they came out with FF15, and whether or not, it did good in sales, again, I think that the sentiment is that the open world wasn't the best, that if they start to step away from that, other people are going to probably do the same thing. So where's the next trend going? If it's not hallway simulators and it's not open world, what's like a good middle road? What's a good example of a game that's like middle of the road?
Just real quick, there is no FF16 currently announced in development, right?
That we're aware of, no.
No, yeah.
Would that make this the first time actually in our entire lives that there's not a Final Fantasy number title in development?
That we're aware of, maybe.
Well, and keep in mind that 15 was that was a project that was moved, right? Like, it was originally versus 13,
right?
And then they came out and said it was 15. So ostensibly during that point there was no numbered Final Fantasy that was being worked on.
14 was in development.
Was it though?
Okay. I would. Well, 1.0 was in development.
Was it?
Its fetus was being aborted.
Jesus.
When 13 came out, really?
Wasn't 14 already in development when 13 launched?
I don't
think
remember.
It was.
I don't remember. I don't. The timeline is so warped and distorted.
It's such a weird period of time.
I know. There's a lot of booze and pot that I have to try to
sift through.
Yeah, that I have to work through to get to the other side of those memories.
Right.
Yeah, no, I mean, it
just occurred to me. I think it's the first time in our lives that we're unaware of a Final Fantasy being in development.
Interesting. Wow.
End of an era.
I wonder if they're just.
We can hope.
I wonder if they're just letting sentiment cool on this.
Well, they're also working on all the flipping episodes right now. Episode Gladiolus.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, they are doing the DLC.
Snapchat Kid.
Well, and that. Hang on. No, the FF7 remake, does that count as a main series Final Fantasy game?
It's a numbered Final Fantasy.
It is.
Because it's 20.
It's not similar enough to Final Fantasy VII where you can just be like, it's just a remake.
Because it's 2017 and everything must be a reboot and everything must fold in on each other.
Man, don't you feel real dirty calling that a numbered title?
Kinda, yeah.
It doesn't feel good.
No, I don't feel great about it. Yeah, no, that's weird, man.
Yeah. So to round out this conversation, then, well, I guess what I'd like to try and put an end cap on this is, what should our expectations for developers be? Should it be on a developer by developer basis? Should it be like based on the game that's coming out, or is it just like an individual thing where we each kind of expect different things from our games? Because I would much rather have, FF7 original style graphics with great characters and stories than I would Final Fantasy 15.
Well, I think that one of the things that we're kind of overlooking is, exactly what indie games have kind of done to shake up this idea of the industry knows what its players want. Because indie games come out so often and will be a viral hit, or will be
Super Meat Boy. I want to be the guy.
They'll subvert expectations, right? Like, they'll subvert those audience expectations and end up selling a bajillion copies as a result.
Oh God, Binding of Isaac.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Like, how many games have now been worked into our consciousness that 10 years ago, if somebody had written down the idea on a piece of paper, if someone had told you what Undertale was going to be, you would have looked at Toby Fox and you would have gone, "You're out of your fucking mind."
I want to make a modern day Earthcraft mod.
Yeah. And sell it. And sell it and be able to make a ton of money and have it be one of the most unique and talked about games of
the decade.
Yeah, of the decade. And the thing is that he fucking did it. Like, he didn't need someone like an Ubisoft or an EA to come in and do it for him. The what is it? The pipeline, that was already established. The tools were there that he could just use to be able to put that out and be able to market on it. And the thing is that I think that a lot of game companies have taken notice of that, have been able to look at what indie games have done in the small time that we've had access to them and how successful they've been, and it's made them question some of their fundamental models. And I think moving forward, as we start to see more talent go from indie to, AAA development, because, can you imagine if Toby Fox now, after the success of Undertale, goes to a place like Sony and is able to leverage them for a ton of resources for a Toby Fox game with Sony behind, you know what I mean? That's exactly sort of what Kojima did after leaving Konami. He went, hey, Sony, let me, give me the money to be able to, complete my vision. And Sony went, here's a blank fucking check. Make your space station office that you want.
Go fuck gamers' minds.
You know what I mean?
Pervert an entire generation.
Exactly. It's that kind of, I think we're going to see a move back towards the auteur. The fact that we can only name Hideo Kojima as one of the few video gaming auteurs that's left in the industry, I think is evidence of a vacuum. That's evidence of an opportunity. That's evidence of someone like a Toby Fox being able to come in and make enough of a name for himself where he's able to leverage way more resources from AAA games and be able to execute his vision. Because a lot of times what this was what games were for a long time was a vision that was made within the restrictions of a video game. And now those restrictions have been taken off, and I think that for a while there's going to be let's get all of our new toys and throw them out there and just see what ends up sticking around. But there is going to be a process of shaving away and finding out what is the best gameplay for the story that you're trying to tell.
There was always an element of appreciating developers for being able to do a lot with a little, for being able to convey a message with lower graphics and stuff like that. And now that appreciation is taken away, and when the graphical capabilities go up, our expectations kind of go with them. We forgave games a lot more when they were running on Super Nintendo graphics because, how much can you do with that many color options and with that many pixels to work with?
Except Super Nintendo games look fucking beautiful. A lot of them do. You can do a lot of the Super Nintendo graphics.
Even still to this day. And again, proven by Toby Fox. And it's not, I saw someone speak up in the chat, Nihilist in the chat going Undertale, but with cutting edge graphics. What I'm saying is having a visionary mind and an artistic mind that is able to fuck with you in the way that Toby Fox was able to do through the medium of Undertale, having somebody at the helm driving the creative decisions of a project, you'll end up in the end with something way closer to what was that one game? It had the sanity meter and it
Amnesia?
It used to turn your TV off.
Eternal Darkness.
Eternal Darkness. That's it. Yeah, you'll end up with a game a little bit more like that than you know what I mean? I'm just saying, put more resources in the guy's hands.
Yeah.
Let the guy paint with more than an 8-bit canvas.
Yeah. Eternal Darkness was a great example of what you can do with better graphics. That game fucked with me on such a weird level the first time I played it. It was I like everyone, as soon as it started screwing my TV's functions, I got up, walked over, grabbed my remote, trying to figure out what was wrong with it.
Yeah.
And all the way to the end of the game when it started threatening to delete my save file if I screwed up, I'm like, hey, come on, now I'm 40 hours into this game.
And again, that is one of those things that a creative mind is able to bring to the table. And I feel like games right now, specifically AAA games, are very much a paint by numbers, decision by committee.
Yeah.
What is what's going to be the decision that sells the most copies?
And then the worst offender when you get the Ubisoft, let's put out 2 Assassin's Creed per year. That's exactly the same game over and over and over.
Now, to be fair to Ubisoft, at least they've backed off of the Assassin's Creed thing.
Yes, which hopefully shows the rest of the industry.
I wonder if sliding sales had anything to do with that decision.
Yeah.
Money.
Wonder if the movie had anything to do with it.
I made it through 15 minutes before I turned it off.
You got through 15 minutes? I'm shocked.
I was actually able to sit through the Dead or Alive movie, but I could not do Assassin's Creed.
You've seen way more Nicolas Cage movies than I'm comfortable naming on this show.
Not recently, just like the olden days, like Con Air. Con Air was a great one.
Yeah, how about Face Off?
Con Air was
Face Off?
legitimately a good movie, though.
Con Air was great.
The movie with the bees.
See, I haven't seen the B movie.
How have you not seen? How have you not seen Wicker Man?
No, not seen Wicker Man.
That movie.
That is the bee
weird.
movie.
Wait, is it?
That's the movie with the bees. Yes.
I
Yes,
thought
it is.
wasn't knowing the B. No, wait,
No.
no, I'm thinking of
No. Oh my God.
Hold
knowing.
on, The Happening.
No.
The
Okay.
Happening. That's a B movie, right?
No.
Oh,
No.
I thought bees died in there though. With Mark Wahlberg, he's like, the bees are dying and like shit's happening.
To be fair, okay, we don't have enough time to unpack The Happening and the pile of crap that was.
We have to steal the.
Declaration of Independence.
Yes, Jesus.
Oh,
I was
national
gonna say the
treasure.
Constitution. But I'm
Wow.
like, that's not enough words.
Wow.
It was a big one, but not enough.
Forgot the Constitution.
No, he
No,
forgot
I
the Declaration
remember
of
the
Independence.
Constitution, but I was smart enough to know that was not the right one.
Okay.
He forgot the Declaration of Independence.
There you go.
I was gonna say the Constitution of Independence. I'm like,
National Treasure 2 was better. It had Sean Bean in it.
Did he die?
Of course he dies.
Does he?
I don't think anyone
I think
dies.
he survives that one.
I don't know. I don't think anyone dies in
Boromir, right?
National Treasure movies, do they?
Was it? That is Boromir, yes.
then yes, he dies.
You may not see it. It may be an off-screen death.
He's
But he's
lived
dead.
through 2 seasons of his Netflix show, so there's that.
That's amazing.
Right?
That my favorite.
That's what
one,
you think, but actually,
He's been dead the whole time.
Yeah, this is just like his.
It's gonna be
dead
Sixth
self
Sense.
going
He's
through it.
actually dead.
There you go. All right. Well, I think that's going to wrap it up for Final Encountercast today. I want to thank you all for joining us. Twitch.tv